we want to have the best place to work. And my goal, when I started as president, we've been doing the survey for a long time. I think we were considered the 61st best place to work in Northeast Ohio. That's good. There's a lot of places to work in Northeast Ohio. I'm like, I feel happy about that. But I was like, I think we can be better, and I want to be the best at that. And then a year in, we jumped to 10th, and then we jumped to 3rd. And, my goal is to be number 1, and I communicate that to our employees all the time. And I don't want to be number 1 because I want to be number 1 on the list. I want to be number 1 because I want to have the best possible experience for them. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out with a unique guest, I would say, my friend Casey, who is the president of St. Edward High School. So maybe, I don't know how much you follow the podcast or us at EPI, Casey, but people in our audience know how near and dear my high school is to my heart. And you know my story a little bit. It really changed my life. I had to go to summer school to get into St. Ed's. And once I got there, it really changed my life. And between, obviously, my parents and some mentors along the way, I would say the Scott that's presented in front of you today, really a foundation was built really from the core values and the teachings that I learned at St. Ed's. And given we're kind of both educators, you're certainly an educator. We do professional education while you're teaching the high school students. I thought, what a cool opportunity to bring you on the show to talk about things like culture, next generation leadership, and how you're kind of a business owner in your own sense, right?
Sure,
you're an executive leader with, I looked this up, like 900 students and 150 employees. Like, that's a pretty big business.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, man. So I want to dive in. I kind of want to dive into it. And you have a unique career as well. Do you know if you're the youngest president at St. Ed's ever?
I think I probably am.
Yeah. So you graduated in 2000, right?
Yeah.
And I graduated in 2004. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of right there with each other. Yeah. So as over your course of going to St. Ed's, leaving, coming back, did you know that was what you wanted to do? Like, hey, I wanted to be the president of a whole major high school in the Cleveland area?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily. And so I came back to St. Ed's professionally in 2007.
Yep. So 7 years later, man, you were back.
7 years later, but I was like essentially a glorified intern at that point. I was just working in the advancement office.
Yeah, I think I remember that, yeah.
And just doing anything just to help the school. And the school was not in great shape at that time in 2007. It was just going through some challenges from enrollment standpoint, from a financial standpoint, and I don't think there wasn't a really clear vision about who are we as a community, what are the opportunities that we provide as a school at St. Ed's, and I tell people the story all the time. I came home after my first day working at St. Ed's, and I said to my wife, I think I've made a mistake. I don't know if this is going to be the right thing for me, because I loved it as a student, right? And so,
of course,
we romanticize those times in our lives.
Yeah.
And so you just have a certain expectation of a place, and then when you go to the place and it doesn't meet that expectation in the moment, you can have these moments of, oh boy, did I make a big mistake?
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer, right?
But I said, I owe them a year. They gave me a job, and I'm going to give it a year.
Okay.
1 year, I'm now in my 18th year there.
Wow.
And so,
So
it's been amazing to just see the way that the school has evolved over 18 years.
And you been in the president's role for how long now? 2 years?
This is my third year.
Third year?
Yeah.
And coming from St. Ed's is an all-boys Catholic school, private school, you are only the second lay person to run the school.
Yes.
Is that still a unique experience? How's that transition been?
It's becoming less unique in Catholic schools, certainly. But it is, religious versus lay people. They bring different perspectives into any sort of business. And so, the there were religious brothers, the Brothers of Holy Cross, who founded and started St. Ed's, and were these wonderful stewards of the school for years. We're celebrating our 75th year, and the that charism of the brothers, that kind of gift they've given us in terms of their vision for what education for young people can be, is absolutely at the very heart of what we do. The way we execute now is just slightly different, right? And so I often will hear, it's funny, when you hear from alumni, you hear from them about interesting things. And one of the things that you get the most commentary back on is snow days. And the reason I bring up snow days is it just gives a perspective of how the world has changed and how leadership of our organization has changed. We'll have a snow day now, and you'll get a bunch of people saying, in my day, we never had snow days. And I was like, all right, well, what was your day? Your day was the school was run by people who lived at the school.
I know, right? And that, I mean, not to go down like reminiscing alley with all of our listeners, but when I was there, it was still the brothers' home.
They lived at the school.
Right there. Yeah.
And the second piece was they didn't have children or families. So like we have snow days for adults. We don't have snow days for kids.
Yeah.
Because if you got 4 kids at home and they can't go to school, what are you going to do with them? We don't have a workforce then.
Yeah. That's true.
And so there's just been this evolution in terms of the management of the school. And as part of that evolution, we have been very, very intentional about ensuring that our students will always know why the school exists, where the school came from, the men who gave their lives to building the school to what it is, and then creating an employee base who wants to do the same.
So let's talk about that. I was like talking to him before we got on air here, and we have a lot of business owners here. We have a lot of advisors to business owners here, and I just think it's a unique perspective because though you don't necessarily own St. Ed's, you are a president of a pretty major and impactful community-type organization, 150 or so employees, 900 something students that go there, and your students and their families are almost like your customers.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, when I was just kind of prepping for the show, St. Ed's is like a 2024 top workplace. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So,
it's pretty wild. Congratulations.
It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's something that we work really hard on. In 2024, we were ranked as the third best place to work in all of Northeast Ohio.
So how'd you get there?
Well, so there's the, how do they measure it? So it's measured based on employee feedback. And so all of these organizations, they take the same survey and they provide honest feedback. The way that we got there was, one, being very conscious about that's who we wanted to be. And here's, I want to have a great workplace, one, because like people are the heart of what we do.
Exactly.
So I say this to people all the time. Schools are not campuses of buildings. They're communities of people.
Yes.
And so you could take our people and you could put us in the middle of Idaho and St. Edward High School would still exist. So it's not about a physical structure. It's only about people. And so if people are so critical to your organization and how you run, you better make sure you treat those people really, really well.
Yes.
So to us, our people are like gold.
Yeah.
And so we want to have the best place to work. And my goal, when I started as president, we've been doing the survey for a long time. I think we were considered the 61st best place to work in Northeast Ohio. That's good. There's a lot of places to work in Northeast Ohio. I'm like, I feel happy about that. But I was like, I think we can be better, and I want to be the best at that. And then a year in, we jumped to 10th, and then we jumped to 3rd. And my goal is to be number 1, and I communicate that to our employees all the time. And I don't want to be number 1 because I want to be number 1 on the list. I want to be number 1 because I want to have the best possible experience for them.
Yeah.
And we're competitive people, and I want to be the best at providing a workplace experience and a culture that people want to come to. Not just our adults, our students too. So,
do you find that your culture? So it's interesting, just the kind of comparing like my business and then the organization that you run. Is my customers can feel my culture, right? But they're not the 8,000 SEPAs that we represent are across the world, so they're not coming into the office like you are here in Cleveland and experiencing the culture and the people firsthand. But your people do. So do you divide culture? Meaning, like, is there a culture that you're teaching the kids and the culture that you're teaching your staff and employees? Or is it one community, one culture, and they all parts of you're one organization?
It's one culture.
Yeah.
Right?
Regardless if you're 14 just starting out or 65 teaching at the school.
Correct.
You're a part of one community.
It's one community, one culture. And, for us, I think it starts with joy. Like joy is at the center of our culture and what we do every day. And so how do we create an environment? And if you walk in our doors any morning, any school day, we want you to feel that joy.
Feel it.
And so, and it's things like the way we greet kids when they walk in the door. We've always got music playing. There's this real collegial environment that happens between our students and amongst colleagues. And we're very intentional about that because, the work we do is hard work. And, educating young people is challenging work. And, I have the same philosophy about students and the way they learn. Kids can do hard things. It's a lot easier for them to do hard things if they're enjoying it. And so you want to create that culture of joy because kids will stretch themselves to do, they'll kind of push their limits if they're in a joy-filled, safe environment. Same with adults.
Yeah.
So the work that our teachers do, the work that our staff does, it's difficult work. And they're going to be much more likely to be committed to that work if every day they walk into an environment that is a joy-filled environment and a place that they want to be. And so we spend a lot of time on that.
So this is something that I would assume has taken place over the last 3 years of your presidency there.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a primary motivation for me.
Yeah.
And I think through that all the time. I'm also somebody who does not believe in the hierarchy of organizations.
Okay.
And
that's could
like
be a little
whether that's right or wrong, right? And so, my job is, to me, at the same level of importance as a first-year algebra teacher.
Sure.
Like we need all of us to help the organization run the right way. If you have one person missing, it's difficult for us to be at our best. And so, for me, I try to create an environment of a lot of accessibility. People are very, very comfortable telling me exactly what they think. I never want to create this environment where the feeling is like there's this hierarchy and we have to be careful about the hierarchy because one person outranks another person. Like I don't believe in that stuff at all. And I will say, like, that's not necessarily easy for a lot of people, and I understand that too. So like that might be a unique thing for me. That's not necessarily the best thing for every organization.
Yeah.
And as somebody once said to me, because I was kind of giving this missive on how I don't care about titles, and I said, well, you don't care about the titles because you have the title.
Oh yeah, you are.
So it's like a different perspective, right? It's like
it's interesting.
I don't have to chase down the title. I don't really care about it.
Right.
But I do believe in a workplace environment where people have a freedom to express who they are. Like, to me, that's where innovation comes from.
I totally agree. No, we have something, when you're telling that story, I think about our business. We have something in our business called trust accelerators, right? So there's a set of core values, but trust accelerators are a bit different in the sense that they accelerate trust, which accelerates communication and accelerates decision making. So quite literally, just the other day, if you took the hierarchy and broke it down, right, as the president of this company, I had an employee on our team come to me that was maybe in a ranking system 4 ranks down the hierarchy, but came into my office to have a conversation about something difficult that was on their mind. And to your point, you talked about, I wrote down like the power of feedback, the accessibility to the president, being able to just walk into the office and close the door and say, hey, Scott, can I have a deep and maybe awkward conversation to make us a better organization? I don't think you get that a lot at other organizations, and that would be a contributor to a top workplace in Northeast Ohio. Yeah,
I think so. I hope so. I just want a place where people feel like their voice is heard.
Yeah.
and that they can be forward with their voice.
Did you find that there was like turnover in your team, given this new mentality, right? Because you have some of the old guard that's to your, you got the president of the organization saying, "Look, I'm not a big hierarchy guy, so like let's build community, let's be full of joy when we come in."
Yeah,
it's just a different way of thinking. Is there challenges with that?
There are challenges, and it's not always easy, and you I think as a leader you have to understand different people's personality styles and their work styles, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm an extrovert in many ways, and so like I get filled up when I'm surrounded by people.
Yeah.
Some people are not like that, and so there has to be an understanding that like different people work in different ways, but everybody's work style is critical to the overall success of the team, and so. But I will say, like when you're hiring, and we're fortunate, we have barely any turnover from a professional standpoint. But when you're hiring, you need to hire for culture first. Yeah, and so I say to people all the time, like certification doesn't necessarily equate to qualification.
Yeah,
and so
totally.
You've got to be a good fit for the culture. And not everybody's a fit for that type of culture.
Yeah.
And so
I totally agree with that too. We even started putting in personality tests when we hire at EPI because it just goes deeper into the culture. And ever since COVID too, most people are pretty comfortable on camera doing Zoom calls, right? But then the third interview, we used to do all interviews on Zoom, and now we're doing the third interview back to the in person, so that we can just sit at a table like this and just get to know each other. But yeah, I think culture is absolutely key, and maybe more so than ever before, as kind of maybe our country, our world is changing, right? And culture, like kind of buzzword of being authentic, communication, collaboration are all things that I think like maybe next generation leaders and team members want and look for. What about the other thing that I think is interesting about your role is that you have to carry this message. We talk to the students, to your students, and to your team, your staff. But you also have like multiple groups that you got to kind of sell the culture into, right? You have your board of trustees, you have your donors, you have the students' parents, you have like an executive team, I would assume. How has that been for like a relatively young guy too, over the last 3 years, trying to sell this kind of new way of educating, doing business, creating culture to all of those groups? Have they all been pretty accepting?
Yeah, I think part of it is you've got to have people's trust, right? And so and trust comes from a lot of different places. And I think I've been fortunate enough to build trust. One, because I'm an alumnus of the school, so I care deeply about the place.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think there's an understanding that people know. Okay, I'm going to do this because I want it to be in the best interest of the school. The other thing is I've been there for a long time now. So people they know who I am, they understand how I operate. And I think accessibility is a trust builder. Yeah. And that can be a challenging thing is sometimes you just want to be able to go to the grocery store and not have like 10 conversations, right?
We've laughed about this before too, because you're way more in the spotlight here in Cleveland, right? Like people know you.
Yeah, like people know.
To your point, you go to the grocery store, your boys, your freaking baseball games, and you're like, I just want to watch this game, or I just want to put these eggs in my cart. And you're accessible and you're welcoming.
Yeah,
and so you're like an influencer in our community.
Yeah, I try to do that, but sometimes you got to build up your energy for it, right?
Exactly.
It's not always easy. Sometimes it's easier, or it's harder on my wife or my kids. But it just comes with the role, right?
It does.
And so I kind of look at it as like a joyful, positive part of the role. But it is. That's a way that you build trust with people too. And so I think people know, like I'm trying to do what's in the best interest of the institution. And then the other thing for me this year that's a change is my oldest son is a student at St. Ed's now.
Oh man, last time we had lunch, you were telling me about this. School hadn't started, I don't think.
School hadn't started, yeah.
So how's it going?
It's going great.
All right, good.
It's going great. But I will say, like I was nervous about it.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know, right?
Right.
So and I can be forthcoming about what my fear was. My fear was like, what if I've spent all of this time telling people that this is what our school community is, and then my own son goes and I see a different perspective and it's not what I've been telling people. And so that was a big fear, right?
Yeah, big fear,
I've kind of committed my life to this.
Yes.
Can I provide my own child with a great experience? And I would say that it has really like exceeded my wildest expectations.
It's a hell of a case study, right?
It is, yeah. Like you don't want to mess it up with your own kid. And so it's been great, but it's been a really wonderful perspective to have from a parent standpoint.
Yeah.
But it's a delicate balance too, right? Like
Absolutely.
there's stuff I got to stay out of, and I have to kind of walk a little bit of a fine line to make sure that my son gets to have. It's his school. It's not my school.
Right.
Exactly. And so like it's got to be allowed to be his school without me overshadowing.
Cool. Well, I'm glad it's going well, man. I remember that lunch conversation that we had. That was, as a dad, that would be a big moment. So I want to transition a little bit. We got to take a quick break, but when I come back, I want to now focus on educating the next generation, right? So our business has certainly changed over the last 4 years after our pandemic and the way in which we're delivering virtual education and in-person education. And for our audience, I was saying this pre-show to you, that we work a lot with millennials, Gen Xers, and baby boomers. Mm-hmm. And the big curiosity is folks like you, how are you educating the next generations of leaders that, frankly, folks like me, maybe folks like you will employ one day?
Yeah.
And so we'll do that right after a quick break. Stick with us.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial, and with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it, hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So we are talking to KC about what it's like to basically grow his organization, which is a high school here in Northeast Ohio. I think the other cool thing to venture down in the second segment here of the show is how are we educating the youth of America, right? I think a thing in our in our space, right? Advisors helping business owners grow value, position their companies, transition, and now you have this next generation that we're still learning from, this like Generation Z and Generation Alpha, which I think you have a little bit of a blend of kind of both generations at the school. So the one thing that I saw you say that has stuck with me as well is, I think it's quoted as, you talk to St. Ed's teaches to the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, so I think that the best way to think about that or to illustrate that is, for most of our kids, and think of the conversation or the question that a lot of high school students get or even younger is, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, for most of our students, the job that they will have when they grow up doesn't exist right now.
That's interesting.
So
that's interesting.
It's no longer I'm just going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. These jobs don't necessarily exist because the evolution of the workforce is happening so fast. The evolution of technology is happening so fast. So you have to think of it through the lens of skill development versus just kind of content memorizing. Right.
Yes.
So we say all the time, our students need to be creators, not consumers. And when we went to school, we were consumers, right?
Yeah, I would say it's about as traditional as schooling is for my. Not that it wasn't a great experience.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like what you've created at St. Ed's today.
Yeah, I mean, when we were in high school, really smart teacher would stand up at the front of the room and say, here's some stuff I know. I'm going to write it on the board. You write it down too. And then at the end of the week, we'll see if you can memorize what you wrote down. Yeah. And because you're not walking around with like a set of encyclopedias in your pocket, and this is information you may want to know. Right. And, it was really we were in high school like really at the advent of the internet making its way into schools.
Yeah, I'm great.
But to me, it was the smartphone that really changed things. So, if someone were to ask you, what dates was the Civil War, it's like, all right, well, I remember that I memorized this when I was in 7th grade, and it was 1861 to 1865. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, now, that's not a valuable piece of knowledge. It's in your pocket, right?
Right.
Like, why would you ever need to know that?
Right.
Now, do you need to know the causes of it? Do you need to understand the different conflicts that led up to it? All of those different pieces are important, and content helps you get to that. But really, good education now is skill development. So, how do we, teach people how to be good critical thinkers? How do we teach them to be strong communicators? Yeah. How do we teach them the social skills they need to actually synthesize all of that stuff and kind of put it out into the world? So it's a very, very different approach, and it's frankly an approach that comes with more unique failures, right? So if you're creating something, the likelihood is that not everything you create is going to be perfect.
Of course.
Right. Or, sometimes it just doesn't hit. Yeah. And so you have to change the way you assess kids so that, a failure isn't an F. A failure might be an A, but it's the process they went through to get to that finished product that's ultimately the most important.
Yeah, that's wildly different than when we
Very
were there,
different.
Right? To your point, it was like take a test on stuff that you pretty much memorize, and it's an A, B, C, D, or F. So how do you guys... out of just curiosity, how are you guys grading that? So now I'm going to show you a process of how I got there. Now the end result, I guess, wasn't what we looked for, but maybe it's still an A. How do you? Is it subjective? Is it objective? How do you get there?
Yeah, I mean, there's objectivity, there's subjectivity, and there are elements of content that still matter.
Yeah.
But you have to be very straightforward with kids and upfront about what is it that we're actually measuring.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not necessarily measuring your ability to know these facts. I'm measuring your ability to take those facts and create something new with it. And what does that look like in a rubric so that as a kid you understand, okay, this is why, the relevance for kids too is so important. Kids want relevance in their education. And so if they understand why they're doing something, they're much more apt to take to it.
Yeah.
Right. And as educators, kind of universally, we have not necessarily always done a great job of explaining the why of what we're doing. The why when we were kids was because it's the next chapter in the book. Like, why? Why are we doing this? It's like, well, the textbook editor said this is the next chapter in the book, and so we have to be much more clear about the why. And math always takes the biggest hit because what's the question that you always hear about math? Like, why do we do this? Like, when am I ever going to need this?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what if the reason we taught math is because we're teaching you to reason? And everybody needs the ability to reason.
Yeah,
and so we're training you to problem solve and to reason.
Yeah.
We're not training you because you may be in a situation where you need to answer an algebraic expression. It's like we're teaching you to reason.
The concept of teaching the why is something that has hit us here at EPI as well. So whether we're working with our customers or with our employees here, I do find, in particular over the last 12 to 18 months, that the why behind things has come much more into the spotlight. Like, okay, Scott, we'll do that, but I really want why? Why does it matter? To your point, the math equation is in the most simple form, right? Like, it's not about 2 + 2 = 4. It's about the critical thinking, the reasoning, teaching around it. But I would agree with that finding the why behind the stuff that you're doing is much more in the spotlight than ever before. And it seems like it's like that way in education. What about, so obviously this is the next generation of workforce here, and you get to see them basically every day, right?
Yeah.
Kids between probably 14 and 18 years old. What are some insights you have in working with these folks? Because again, going back to your concept of being accessible to these folks, I'm sure you're sitting at tables and getting to know these kids.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So what is it about? I mean, you have a son that's in the generation as well. What do you know about them today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, kids today, again, to reiterate the relevance piece, relevance is really important to them. I think that young people today really want to have an impact.
Yeah.
Some are driven by the typical motivators of, whether they be financial motivators or, but I think a lot of kids, they're looking for where's an area where I can have an impact. And that's a great thing. I think as a society, that's what we want. One thing that I think is challenging about this generation is, and I'll be pretty honest, the parents of this generation are impacting the young people of this generation in a way that I think will be challenging down the line, right? And so if you consider the world we live in and everything is out in the world, we live highly curated lives because we're sharing our lives constantly with people.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so, and if you're leading a very highly curated life that you're sharing constantly with everybody you know, and some people who you don't even know that well, right?
Yeah, some people you don't know at all.
Yeah, or not at all. You never want to see a situation where my child's made a mistake, even though those mistakes are so important, right? Yeah. And we on the sports side of things, we use the term win or learn, right?
Okay.
And sometimes the learning is more important than the winning.
Yep.
I think this generation of young people, they really struggle with being held accountable.
Interesting.
Accountability is tough for them. And it's something that we are working on constantly with our students, and they just really have a hard time with accountability. And an hour ago, right before I came over here, I just had this conversation with a student. And I had kind of given him some redirection, and he was frustrated by the redirection. And I pulled him aside and I said, listen, man, I know you're frustrated because you think I'm on your back. Here's when you need to be frustrated: when I stop talking to you.
Exactly.
Because it means I've given up.
Exactly right.
So, like, if
Did it hit home for him?
I think so.
Yeah.
I was like, if you're frustrated now, wait till I stop.
Right, exactly.
Then it's going to be really frustrating because it just means somebody doesn't care then.
Yeah, I know.
And so it's kind of reiterating that why to
man.
kids. Like, I'm not just like trying to mess with you.
Yes.
I'm trying to make you better.
Exactly right. Yeah, no, I think that's also really interesting perspective too. You've heard that before from other mentors and figures, right? Where the person the person that stops talking has given up. But what an aha moment for that particular student to say, like, what a great opportunity. He's got the president of the school mentoring him along the way. Like, what an absolute great opportunity. The other thing I think comes to play in perhaps next generation. We see it here in our business more so than ever. I was traveling. Speaking at our local chapter network, right? We have these chapters across the entire United States, speaking on some observation, and continuously, almost in every city that I am in, our advisors are worried about AI.
Yeah.
And taking their jobs in the accounting space, in the financial advisory space, or perhaps AI not being sophisticated enough to actually move the owner in the right direction with the wrong education. How does that affect you guys at St. Ed's teaching kids, students, young men?
I mean, AI is certainly a huge buzz in education. Yeah. Now, one of the things, if you're teaching kids skills versus being focused on content, AI is not as scary. So right now, you've seen large school districts who have completely banned the use of AI in any form, and I feel like that's a perspective that is pretty antiquated, right?
Okay.
But the reason that perspective exists is, if every assignment you give me is, tell me 5 causes for World War II, I can go into ChatGPT and knock that out in 10 seconds and hand that into a teacher. And as a student, I haven't learned anything, and the teacher can't assess it. And so it's scary.
Yeah.
But if you're using AI as an enhancement, it can be an incredibly powerful learning tool. Yeah. And so this year, all of our teachers are required this year to do an AI lesson. And the reason we're doing that is we want our students to understand, one, that it can be an enhancement to their learning, and they have to use it ethically. Yes. But we want them to understand the power of the tool. But we have some teachers, and I think this is great, who their AI lesson that they're teaching is on the dangers of AI. And that's so important as well. So, like our responsibility is to create these young citizens who will go out into the world and think of the way that AI is even impacting our democracy.
Exactly.
And so you don't want to be fooled by it. And so you need to know what it is. You need to understand its power and its capabilities.
Absolutely. So
that you're not fooled by it. Yeah. So, you see the negative, and especially in an education connotation, we always hear about the negatives of AI because people are looking at it solely as a learning replacement.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying about our customers, right?
Yeah, if you see it as an enhancement, though, one great use of AI is you can take huge data sets and synthesize those data sets and make them, much more meaningful. Data is just numbers unless you can bring some meaning to it. And so to teach our students the ways that they're able to do that and to make artificial intelligence work for them is great, while at the same time teaching them the dangers of it.
Yeah, I think that, to me, last time I spoke on this, I said, I just think it's here to stay, right? So
100%,
it's like, yes, it'll evolve over the next decade, but you can't just throw it out now. Like, it's here and it's going to be a part of our life. So why don't we start embracing it? I like the answer that you have is, look, let's use the ethical ways to use it. Let's learn the good and the dangers, and how do we use it as an enhancer to our lives and to our education, and not necessarily something that we're scared of. It's something that I would totally agree with, is that, to me, it's like here. So, like, let's embrace it. Yeah. Because if you don't, you're going to be kind of left behind.
Yes.
You wouldn't assume,
100%,
right? You're going to look back 10 years and go, shoot, I'm just starting to learn this right now. I should have gotten on the wagon when it first came out, so I could have evolved along with it. Well, you said it actually at the start of the show. We're actually kind of we're getting to the top of the hour kind of mark. St. Ed's has made it 75 years, and that is major milestone. So congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
And being a part of that for, you said, what, 17 years of the 17?
It was my 18th year.
18th year.
Yeah.
And being at the president's spot for the last 3, what does the next 75 look for you? Or what does the next 5 look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the next 5 is, we've been a young school, right? 75 years is really not that old. But we've now kind of reached this point of maturation. And, like any business, when you reach a point of maturation, now I think my responsibility is to do the important work now to ensure that St. Ed's is here for 75 more years and 75 more years after that. Yeah. And so, one, establishing a culture that people want to continue to invest in. Our parents invest huge amounts of money to send their sons there. And so setting that culture and ensuring that culture is there to stay. Making sure that we continue to honor the legacy of the brothers who founded the school. Sure. And that legacy is here in 75 years and 75 years after that. And then making the place accessible. And so, it's got to be an affordable experience. Yeah. We could have all the best programs in the world. We could have the greatest campus in the world. If nobody can afford to be there, then
it's
it
all
doesn't
worth
matter.
Nothing, right?
Yeah, it's all worth nothing.
Yes.
And so ensuring that it continues to be an accessible experience. And then just staying at the forefront of what kids need. So what kids need today is different than what kids needed even 5 years ago.
Yeah, even
Certainly
pre-pandemic. I'm sure the pandemic has taught you guys a lot about the way people learn and children.
Yeah, and so for us, we have to stay at the forefront of what this generation of kids need. We're not training them for my world. We're training them for their world.
So how do you get out there and do that? Because you travel a lot too, right?
Yeah, you travel a lot. I mean, you spend a lot of time listening to lots of different people and smart people. You take a lot of risks, right? The list of failures is much longer than the list of successes. It does go back to building up that trust. It's funny. I was just having this conversation yesterday with a group of colleagues, and they were talking about the 4-day work week.
Yeah, how about that, huh?
And somebody jokingly said, wouldn't it be awesome if we had a 4-day school week? And I said, 12 years ago, the schedule that we have now, the first idea was, what if we only went to school for 4 days a week? How would that change the opportunities that our students have? And she said, well, why didn't we go with that? Well, think of the world 12 years ago. Nobody would have embraced that 12 years ago.
No way.
And then I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah. You wouldn't be in the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the 4-day school
it was like, this guy doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
But now there's just been this evolution in the world. And the same opportunities that existed 12 years ago when we thought of that idea still exist today. It's just the world has a little bit more of an openness to hearing an idea like that. Yeah. And that's not to say that we would ever go to a schedule like that. It's meant to illustrate that we're trying to stay at the forefront of what's best for kids, and what's best for kids is being dictated by the environment that they're going out into, and so we have to be in that environment to understand it, and we rely on alumni like yourselves to say, here's what I'm seeing out in the world, and here's what kids need.
Yeah, I think you've always been really, really good with feedback too. I mean, it's something else that I wrote down that you said earlier too, right? Just being open to all different kinds of perspectives, right here in Ohio to across the United States and even around the world. Yeah. Taking in different perspectives of community building, serving next gen leaders, educating the youth. It's really been cool to be a part of. Maybe you're leaning into some advice along the way and being a part of all that. So I really appreciate what you've done over at St. Ed's, man. So we're at the top of the hour already. We'll have to have you back on another show to see how your son's doing in a year, right? But folks, Casey, I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us today and shedding some light on a subject that we don't necessarily talk a lot about. But we will be back on April 16th. So subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. Thanks, Casey. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Man.
Loved it.
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.